Chapter 25. June 1944. Josephine was transported from Intelligence Hub to Intelligence Hub by the Seekostdienst network across the Rhine, a journey through a Reich that felt different to the one she had left only a few months before. Berlin was her destination, and to her other brother, in Broadcasting House in Charlottenburg. She looked tired and strained, dressed as she had been by the admiring Heinrich Müller. But she walked with an air of belonging across the polished wooden floor and up the steps to where her brother would be preparing a broadcast. As expected, William Joyce was sitting in his studio, a bottle of spirit at his right elbow, and at the left, a stack of papers. He looked up and narrowed his eyes when Josephine walked in, then flashed a smile, before replacing it with a sneer. "Josephine," he drawled, his voice the same oily rasp that had haunted the airwaves from Berlin to the Allies. He got to his feet and gave her a leer. "I heard you were playing at being a Red Cross nurse in the Highlands. Or was it a grieving lover?" "I was doing my job, William," she snapped, stepping into the light of the recording booth. "While you've been talking, the SAS has been slaughtering our people in Musi. They are being massacred as we speak, and your radio spy, Milo, is the only one who can verify the coordinates of the survivors. If you don't broadcast the truth, the resistance will claim the victory before the Wehrmacht can finish the job." The double game. How easily it came to her, trying as she was doing to force a public acknowledgement of the SAS prisoners to prevent their quiet execution in the night and fog, while convincing William she was still his loyal informant. She hoped that Bruce had organized the jeeps to parachute into the Vosges for her comrades, and that they were able to get past any Gestapo obstacles. But Joyce was not completely convinced of his sister's loyalty. Knowing she was coming, Lord Haw had prepared a welcome. 88,888,888. "Come and see where I broadcast from now," William Joyce encouraged Josephine. She knew there was something wrong, however, when the heavy oak doors of the recording studios sealed behind them. Her brother took a seat behind the mahogany console, and raised a hand to two guards who had lingered in the shadows. "The truth, Josephine, as to why you are here, is a highly volatile commodity," William drawled, the oily rasp of his voice sliding through the room like a physical contaminant. "And, as such, subject to change. You arrive at my door smelling of French diesel and the unmistakable, lingering scent of English soap, spinning a frantic yarn about SAS massacres in the Vosges. Yet, the whispers from the Gestapo suggest a different narrative. In the current climate of the Reich, such discrepancies are not merely viewed as lies, they are treated as a biological contagion that must be excised." Before she could muster a retort, or even make a move, the side door clicked open to admit a man whose very silhouette seemed to drain the warmth from the air. Dr. Karl Gebhardt came through, white coat over his black uniform of the SS. Josephine shuddered, for she knew well the Ravensbrück 1/4 CK butcher, and his reputation. "Unnecessary formality," William remarked, his eyes gleaming with a predatory, fraternal curiosity as he signaled the guards. "We must ensure that you haven't brought back any unwanted souvenirs. A broken bar, encoded microfilms, a broken bar, hidden messages, a broken bar, a shift in your allegiance." With a practiced, brutal efficiency, the guards stripped her, leaving her utterly exposed beneath the unforgiving, buzzing glare of the overhead lights in the middle of the studio, discarding her clothes into a heap while one of them went through them, retrieving Reichmarks, a water flask and a small pencil. The other, however, brought forth a steel table onto which she was lifted, its surface leaching the heat from her skin as she lay on it. William did not look away, he merely leaned back, sipping his spirit with a detached, voyeuristic interest. Gebhardt's hands, encased in the thin latex glove, began a methodical investigation of her body. He started with the oral cavity, his fingers prying at her jaw to inspect the gums and the undersides of her tongue for hidden cyanide or micromessages. He moved downward, his touch clinical and devoid of any human warmth, palpating the lymph nodes of her neck and the axillae of her underarms, pulling her arms to one side as he did so. The violation intensified as he conducted an exhaustive internal inspection, as he noted her scars from David Sterling's beating of her, gun and weapon injuries before pulling her legs up, feet flat on the cold table, and pulled her knees apart. With what seemed like slow relish, Gebhardt explored her vagina and cervix, his gloved fingers searching for the secret compartments favored by female couriers. Josephine lay still, a guard's hand on her stomach, eyes on her breasts. Josephine looked away, her gaze fixed on the peeling grey paint of the ceiling, her breath coming in shallow gasps as the doctor's hands moved to the lower curve of her abdomen. There, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent tubes, was a thin, silver-pale horizontal line going between her hip bones. Gebhardt took a step back, eyebrows bending together. "What manner of surgery is this?" the doctor hissed, his voice a dry rustle of parchment as he leaned in, his eyes narrowing with a genuine, scientific bewilderment. Nowhere would an abdominal entry be placed this way. Entry would have been through a vertical midline stroke. For what end? When Josephine did not answer, but turned her head to one side, the doctor made an hypothesis. "A cesarean," Gebhardt murmured, tracing the horizontal line with a gloved thumb, pressing into the flesh. But the placement, the precision. It suggests a delicacy of purpose quite unlike our own robust methods. And yet, there is no child. He looked at her, and she stared back at him. "Is there, Miss Joyce?" "Only a broken bar failure." William leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "A miscarriage, then, at 12 weeks?" 14 weeks. He stepped towards his naked sister, looking over her body. "Tell us, Josephine, did an English surgeon remove a burst appendix, or as the doctor suggests, a child?" Josephine felt the bile rise in her throat, not just from the doctor's invasive touch, but from the memory she was about to weaponize. She looked directly at William, her eyes burning with a cold, calculated hatred. "It was Oswald Mosley's," she spat, the name hitting the room like a physical blow. "The child you practically gift-trapped me for before I left for Berlin last." "You wanted me to secure his favor, William. You encouraged the closeness. I was 14 weeks gone when the cells in Holloway became too damp, too cold for a Mosley heir to survive. That scar is the only thing I have left of the loyalty you forced upon me." The lie was a masterpiece of redirection. By linking the trauma to the leader of the British Union of Fascists, who William Joyce idolized and had served, she had turned the evidence of her English surgery into a badge of suffering for the cause. William's sneer faltered. For a moment, the predatory broadcaster was gone, replaced by a man confronted with the messy, visceral consequences of his own political machinations. He looked at the scar again, no longer seeing a mark of treason, but a reminder of the high price his sister had paid in the name of his own ambitions. Gebhardt looked up, his expression one of clinical dismissal. "The uterus is scarred. The trauma significant. It confirms her history within the British fascist circles, William. The technique is indeed elite, the kind of care provided to the inner sanctum of the British government." "Indeed," William replied, his voice losing some of its oily confidence as he stood up and smoothed his tunic. He signaled the guards to release her. The power dynamic had shifted. The shame was no longer hers alone, it was a weight he now had to carry. "Dress yourself, Josephine," he said, turning back toward the microphone, his movements slightly more hurried than before as he waved towards the clothing that Muller had provided. "The Rye is waiting. Let us see if you can broadcast the truth about Musi with the same conviction you used to recount your tragedies." 8,888,888. William watched her. His eyes narrowed. He saw the desperation in her, the way she carried the ghost of the child David had taken from her. He didn't fully trust her, he trusted no one, but he saw a way to use her one last time. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the microphone. "If you are so concerned for the massacre of these terrorists, let us tell the world together." The red light flickered to life. Josephine felt a panic now. She had come to use him, but now, with no way out that crud weaponry to hand in front of her may provide, he was using her. "Germany calling." "Germany calling," Joyce's voice boomed, projecting a false confidence into the ether. "To the families of the SAS units currently being erased in the Vosges, I have a special guest, my own flesh and blood, Josephine." who has spent the last year inside the very heart of Ear House, the Sterling brothers' home, being used as espionage training. She brings word of your failures. Josephine froze. The trap snapped shut. By naming her, William hadn't protected her, he had revealed her to both sides. To the Germans, she was now a known entity, her usefulness as a spy ended. To the British, and specifically to Dudley Clark, Hugh Dalton and Stuart Menzies listening in London, she was now a confirmed traitor, broadcasting from the heart of the enemy's capital. And to her brother, who would hear this betrayal, and Bill Sterling, who would now know she had got herself to the continent, and had hoped it was for David. Would he believe now she had done it for selfish reasons? For Republican reasons? There, William whispered as the light went out, a cruel smile twisting his thin lips. Now there is no going back, is there, sister? You're exactly where you belong, in the dark, with me. Far away, in the mud of the French interior, Paddy Mayne heard that broadcast on a captured wireless. He shook his head, and banged his fist into the mud. What had she done? What on earth had she done? 88,888,888. The broadcast from Berlin rippled through the barbed wire and stone of cold. It's like a physical tremor. In the prominent quarters, the atmosphere was already thick with the smell of scorched airs at coffee and the low-stakes tension of the black market. David Sterling sat at a table improvised from tea crates, his long legs stretched out, looking every bit the captive aristocrat. He was surrounded by ledgers, the meticulous records of his reign as the prison's chief black market coordinator, when he heard the scratchy radio broadcast coming over the loudspeakers, and the Germany calling marker. Above him, the usual roar of derision, stamping of feet and banging of tin crockery accompanied the broadcast, a lull in opposition as the words filtered out. In the solitary cell, which was now acted as his own private room, Sterling leaned back, a cold, dismissive smirk playing on his lips. He got to his feet and made it back upstairs, pleased to crow over his vindication. The stamping of feet diminished when some saw him in the doorway, as the German national anthem came to an end, until there was silence. Reed and Howe were first to approach him, but Sterling swaggered in, pleased with himself. So, it was true, David remarked to the room at large. His voice carried that effortless, devastating bravado. I told Paddy months ago she was a treacherous piece of work. She spent half her time trying to play the SAS for fools and the other half weeping over her so-called mission. He swaggered round the dorm, eyeing those officers who had been close to Josephine. It seems Lord Haw has finally put her to work for his side. He tapped a cigarette against the table, his eyes hardening. I condemn her. She's a turncoat, plain and simple. If she ever shows her face near a British uniform again, she should be hung as high as the Vosges pines. The silence that followed was not one of agreement, but of simmering resentment. Among the prisoners were men who had been in the desert with Josephine, men who had seen the bruises David had left on her, not just physical, but the psychological scars of a punishment David had masked as a conquest. That's a bit rich coming from you, David, a Mike Sinclair told him, his voice vibrating with a quiet, dangerous contempt. We all saw how you treated her here. You didn't discipline her, you forced yourself on her because you couldn't control her. You used her like a common spoil of war, and now you're surprised she's looking for a way out. She was a soldier, David snapped, his face reddening. She failed. She was a woman you beat and then bedded to prove a point, countered Douglas Bader. He stood up on his tin legs, knocking over a tin of biscuits. We know the truth, Sterling. We know why she's in Berlin. She's trying to save those men out there, not sell them out. Why else did she go to her other brother? She would have known he would want to crow it to the world as soon as possible, and he has done. She has used him. We know that he's been in a big invasion force into France. He took a few uneasy steps towards Sterling. So, the SAS, your regiment, have gone undercover and behind enemy lines. Why ever not? While you're busy trading chocolate for silk shirts, other men have taken the initiative. If she's a traitor, it's because the men who were supposed to protect her betrayed her first. The room fractured. The legend of David Sterling, the invincible commander, was suddenly being weighed against the reality of the man who had discarded a human life for his own ego. "Steady on," called a couple of captains from the other side of the room as Bader laid it out. But they were hushed to silence by the rest. "And another thing," Bader told him, "we know that woman who you were tight with, the French Algerian, Collins. Do you have the note?" "Indeed I do," Charles Collins told Bader, loyalty in the rough standing closer than any rank. He held it in front of him. Sterling took a lunge, but was held back by Reed and Peter Allen. In his best colded stage voice Collins read, fragment from a Prisoner's Leisure Hours Fund letter. "The garden is thriving. Eve has escaped the frost. She is seen in the southern sun. Eve Mansour, the woman who had orchestrated the betrayal at Moussy, the one David had once loved with a fierce, reckless passion, had escaped the hangman's noose." Josephine had told her about Eve's betrayal of the men at Moussy, about a secret concentration camp in that area where French men were taken, assumed to be resistance whether they were or not, blanket arrest, and clearing out of any man between the ages of 16 and 60. David went still. The mention of Eve was a ghost from a different life, a complication he hadn't anticipated. If Eve lived, the funkspiel wasn't over. He looked out into the courtyard, at the postal room, where that day's Red Cross parcels would have been delivered, loaded Monopoly sets sat unopened, cans of food waiting for their hidden tools and accessories to be discovered, sewing kits to be reassembled for use on doors and windows, blades disguised in the backbones of combs. No welcome there, Sterling knew, the internal politics of the camp having turned as cold as the Saxon January, and he would know about that. He turned on his heel, and left the dorm.